First of all, I just want to say a massive welcome to each of you and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us in this training with others to join about how we can organise for Rights. We'll just do a few introductions. So my name is Emma Jane and I'm new to working with Amnesty. I just moved to Canada earlier this year, and previous to this I was working in various organisations and movements on issues relating to environmental justice, gender reproductive rights and migrant rights. And I'm delighted to be one of the facilitators joining you this evening for tonight's training. And I'd just like to take a minute to introduce you to a couple of other people that you're going to hear on the call tonight. Ailish, Crystal, Elena and Jenny. So maybe we'll kick off with Ailish. Would you like to just say a couple of few words, if that's okay?
Hi everyone, I'm Ailish. I'm the Regional Activism Coordinator for Northern and Eastern Ontario and the Atlantic region, and I'm based in Ottawa. And I'm going to be moderating tonight, so feel free to pop any questions that you have into the questions bar that you see. And also if you want to chat with everyone on the webinar, maybe to introduce yourself, you can put that in the chat box.
Great, thanks Ailish. Jenny, would you be able to just introduce yourself if that's okay?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Jenny. I'm also new to Amnesty. I'm the youth intern this fall, and I'm also the, I guess you could say, coordinator for Rights. So I'll be your first point of contact if you need any help or if you have any questions or concerns regarding registration or materials for getting your event started. It's nice to meet you all.
Great, thanks Jenny. Crystal, would you be able to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Crystal Giesbrecht. I am a field worker with Amnesty International and I'm also a member of Group 91 in Regina. So in a little bit, I'll tell you about some of the Right for Rights events we've done here.
Brilliant, thanks a million Crystal. Elena, would you be able to say a few words?
Of course. Hello, everybody. My name is Elena Dumitru, and I am wearing two hats. Not quite literally, but one hat is that of Regional Activism Coordinator for Southwest Ontario and the Greater Toronto Area. But the other one is as a member of Amnesty International, as a volunteer with a community group in Toronto. And I've been with that group for 20 years now. So I'm here to share some of my experiences in both roles with regards to Right for Rights, and glad to be part of it and to have you everyone here with us tonight.
Fantastic, thanks Elena. Great, so maybe I'll just take a moment to go through just a few housekeeping points. So this webinar is being recorded and we will be able to send a link to everybody who's registered, and this will be really useful for you to be able to keep as a tool or for a future reference point. While you're on this online training, we really do encourage you to actively participate because this is your learning space. While we are using a webinar platform to host the training to make it accessible to as many people as possible across Canada, which isn't as dynamic as if we were to all be able to meet face-to-face, we would encourage you to be able to ask questions, as Ailish mentioned, through the questions section over on your right-hand side or through the chat box throughout. And we will be taking time throughout the training to be able to check in with you so that you're able to help shape this training as we go. And we'll also have a specific questions and answer space at the end of the training. Just to add that we'll also have a feedback form which we'll send out to you in an email tomorrow, and we greatly appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to fill this in. This is also another space after you've had time to digest everything that we've gone through this evening, and be able to collate some further questions or ideas or suggestions that you might have and be able to share those with us. So maybe to kickstart the training and get a sense of who we all are sharing this space together, everyone could maybe take a minute in the chat box to be able to share where you're joining us for this webinar this evening. So maybe the town or the city that you're joining the training from. And if you just type it into the chat box and you send it to the entire audience, so we can just get a sense of maybe where we're all joining from. So for example, I'm joining tonight's training from Toronto. Don't be shy. Type in and tell us where you're joining from. So Ailish is joining from Ottawa. Ottawa. Where else?
Lots of people in the box saying where they're from. So we've got people from Halifax, from Sparwood, British Columbia, from Iroquois Falls, from Pinehurst, Nova Scotia, from Calgary, from Lewisport, Newfoundland, Oshawa, and Spiritwood, Saskatchewan so far. So all across the country.
Fantastic. It's really nice to get a picture of where you're all coming from and joining this from tonight. Thanks for that. So here's just a quick overview, a quick look at the agenda outlines for some of the things that we hope to cover in tonight's training. We've already gone through a few introductions and welcomes, and now we'll move into getting a bit of an overview of Right for Rights. What is it? How does this work? We'll then look a little bit at how you might prepare for your Right for Rights workshop or event or activity. Then we'll hear a little bit from Crystal, some story exchanges, some tales from Right for Rights organising that she's going to share with us. Then we'll move on and look at how you might use your Right for Rights event to show solidarity. We'll discuss how you might harness online spaces to increase engagement and participation. And then we'll hear some more stories from Elena. And then at the end, finally, we'll have some space for questions and answers. So let's move ahead. Let's talk a little bit about Right for Rights. Sometimes a letter can change someone's life. Well, that's the premise of Right for Rights. This is Amnesty's global letter writing campaign, and it's been growing stronger over the past 15 years that we've been doing it. Right for Rights is now the world's largest human rights event. And every December, Amnesty supporters across the world write millions of letters for those whose basic human rights are under attack. And these are people just like you and me who are continuing a long tradition of writing letters to someone to right some of the world's biggest wrongs. We're just going to take a quick look at a short video which will hopefully give you a flavour of what some Right for Rights events look and feel like. So hopefully that video played okay for everybody. Do let us know via the questions or chat box. Let us know that whether or not that did play for you. I hope it was all right. I think now we'll just look a little bit deeper. Hopefully this gave us a sense of kind of what it looks and feels like and the kind of impact that it has. And we'll just look a little bit about how Right for Rights actually works. So as you saw in the video, activists across countries around the world, across different countries around the world, have taken part in events where they write millions of letters. And we saw people not just taking letters, but that we saw them signing petitions, sending emails, tweets, Facebook posts, taking photographs, postcards, drawings, etc. for people whose rights have been denied. Every year we ask supporters to write 2 letters, which you also saw in the video. One is to the person in authority or decision making, who could be a king or a president, head of police, etc., who can make the change happen. And the other letter that we ask folks to write is for the person or the group of people or community who are fighting for, so as that they know that we're taking action and standing in solidarity with them. Amnesty researchers and campaigners are the ones who let us know who might be the most impactful to target for each of our Right for Rights cases each year. And you're probably wondering, like, does Right for Rights really work? And the answer is yes, it really does work. It really makes change happen because of your letters and actions. And we're going to hear some examples of that later, where people who've been wrongfully imprisoned have been released, where torturers have been brought to justice, and people in prison who are now being treated more humanely as a direct result of Right for Rights events. So each year, Right for Right focuses on different cases. And earlier this year, Amnesty Canada launched the We Defend campaign. This sits under a wider global amnesty campaign called the Brave campaign, which is focusing on human rights defenders under threat. And it made sense for us to focus and align all of this year's Right for Rights cases under this global campaign. So, as you'll see in a minute, all of our Right for Rights cases this year are focusing on human rights defenders at risk. And this is a great opportunity for us to put their situation, risks and challenges that these human rights defenders are facing across the world under spotlight. So this year, Amnesty Canada are working on 10 different human rights defender cases. These are just some illustrations of those cases. And we're also working on one Canadian specific case. We'll take a little look at some of these cases in detail together. So here, these are some beautiful illustrations that have been done by an artist called Rebecca Hendon, who is collaborating with us for this year's Right for Rights campaign. And on your left, you'll see Julhaz Manan. And Julhaz Manan was the founder of Bangladesh's only magazine dedicated to LGBTIQ issues, which is a daring venture in a country where same-sex relations are illegal. Julhaz Manan has a colleague where in his apartment, when men posing as couriers burst in with machetes. Both of these men were brutally murdered in front of Julhaz's mother. And we're using Right for Rights this year to tell Bangladesh to bring Julhaz's killers to justice. In the centre here you'll see Clovis Razavimalala, and he's an environmental activist who's doing everything that he can to protect Madagascar's endangered ruby-coloured rosewood trees from a corrupt network of smugglers who'll stop at nothing to silence Clovis and others like him. So for Clovis, activism comes at a great cost. In September 2016, Clovis was imprisoned and accused of leading a violent protest. Witnesses said that he was at a restaurant at the time, but they were never interviewed as part of the official investigation. So we're using Right for Rights as an opportunity to tell Madagascar to overturn Clovis's sentence. To your right here in red, you'll see Shakilia Jackson. Her brother was gunned down by police in Jamaica in 2014. The police had been pursuing a Rastafarian-looking suspect in a robbery, and her brother Nakia fitted that description. They found him in a small restaurant and they shot him dead. Police killings of mainly young and mostly poor men is all too often in Jamaica, with more than 2,000 people killed in the last decade. Shakilia, here in the illustration, has been fighting for justice and has rallied many other families who've been affected by police killings. And as a result of this, she's been intimidated in an attempt to silence her efforts. So we're using Right for Rights to tell Jamaica to protect Shakilia and and ensure the justice for all those killed by police. I just want to briefly walk you through some of the other Right for Rights cases that we're focusing on this year. So starting from the left, this is Israel-occupied Palestinian territories, Farid and Isa, who are facing charges for protesting war crimes. In Honduras, the Milpa indigenous movement who are risking their lives to save their land. To the right, in Finland, Sakris Kupila, who is a young transgender rights activist demanding the right to be who he is. Starting on the left, in Egypt, Hanan Badr el-Din is facing charges for searching for her missing husband. In China, Niulan has been made homeless for defending housing rights. And in Chad, Mahadine is facing a life sentence for Facebook posts that he made. In Turkey, you may have heard over the last month some amplification happening around this case already. The director and chair of Amnesty International Turkey, as well as other human rights activists, are facing charges simply for defending human rights. And finally, in Canada, the rights of Indigenous peoples in the Peace River Valley are being ignored over the planned Site C Dam in northeastern British Columbia, which will have a severe impact on First Nation, Métis families and communities who depend on this unique ecosystem. You can find more detailed case profiles for each of the Right for Rights cases at rightathon.ca. And there are many other materials there, including the illustrations that you just saw for social media use. And these are also available on your resources handout. So to your right, I think, you'll see just above the chat box, there's different handouts in there. And so if you click on the resources list, you'll see lots of different materials and links to different things in there that I think will be really helpful in your organising and preparation for your Right for Rights this year. So one of the key things to remember about Right for Rights is it's all about act local, think global. Right for Rights is a global moment where people across the world organise at a local level, and we're using letter writing as a tool to influence world leaders to protect individuals or communities whose human rights have been denied. The simple act of writing a letter may seem small, but it's when we act together that we can amplify our collective demands. And on the 10th of December, we're going to take action as a global community towards the world we want to see. So I'm just going to pause for a moment to check in with the group here and see if anyone has any questions, or to see if Ailish, if there's anything that's popped up.
Well, a couple of people just noted that they couldn't hear the last video, so just to say. And someone is asking if there's a printer-friendly version of those cases, and there is. There's a single PDF that you can download, and we can send that to you.
Great. Thanks a million, and do feel free to keep adding in questions or messages into the chat box and questions box. Ailish is going to be keeping an eye on that, and we will have these check-in moments as we kind of go through different modules this evening. Great. So we'll take a little look, now that you know what Right for Rights is about and how it works, we'll look at what you might need to prepare for your own Right for Rights event. So there's some different steps to consider for organising your event, and hopefully some tools and resources that we might be able to provide you with that will help you along the way. So here you'll see some different things you might want to consider before and during, I suppose, and also after organising your Right for Rights event. So what kind of support do you have to organise your event? Are you organising alone? Do you have some friends, family, work colleagues, or group support for helping organise your event? What kind of capacity do you or your organising team have to organise the event? Remember, it's important not to bite off more than you can chew, to look at what you know you have the support and capacity to deliver on realistically, and then look at some of the things that you might love to do and see if you can make maybe one or some of these things happen altogether. Where will you hold your event? Will it be public or private? Are you hoping to organise your event at work, in school, in your local community centre, in your library, in a public space, indoors or outdoors, around your dinner table? Considering some of these questions, it's really important to know what the specific needs of your event might be. And you're hoping to make this an intimate event, or if you're hoping to plan something that's a little bit more public, that you can raise awareness in your community. How long might you have to prepare everything and organize your event? Well, right now you've got 2.5 weeks to organize your event for Right for Rights. So these are just some of the things that you might want to think a little bit more about, but it's important to remember to be realistic, to set achievable goals and objectives for your first event. And you can always save some of the more elaborate or creative, great ideas for next year's organizing. Once you've decided on what kind of event you'd like to organise, you can head over to writeathon.ca and sign up and register your event. And this is what the registration form will look like on the left. Some of you may have already registered your event, and if you haven't, please do make sure to do that as soon as possible, because we are sending out emails with relevant updates and materials and resources for organisers, and you'll need to be registered to get them. Once you've signed up, you'll be brought to this event organizer profile in the Writeathon website, where you can share more details about your event with us. The more you tell us about your event, the better we can support you. For example, we try as much as possible to tailor our support. So if you're organizing a public event, we want to be able to send you specific materials and resources that will help you in your organizing to increase your impact and visibility as much as possible, so as that others in your community will know about it and can join you. If you're organising for young people in schools, then we want to be able to send you some of the youth-specific materials and content that we've developed, and so as that you can help make your event stand out. At the top here, you'll see that there's various sections of information which will allow you to tell us more about you and more about your event. And this is where you can share some feedback with us as well after your event. And I would say I'd encourage you to really use this feedback space, because this is an opportunity for you to be able to tell us about what you'd like to see next year and help shape what the Right for Rights campaign in the year to come can be, would look like based on your learning. And at the bottom of the page here, highlighted in yellow, you'll see a link. And I suggest that you save this somewhere after you've registered your event. Or if you use bookmarks on your browser, you can bookmark it so you can easily come back to this page and update it with more information as your planning for your event progresses. This here is something really practical, but it's probably something you're all going to want to do. If you head over to our Shopify account, you can order free Right for Rights kit to be delivered to you. And there's also many other free materials or swag that you can order from the shop to bring to your event. So make sure to check that out. And all of the websites, just to note, that are mentioned during and throughout this training are listed in your resources handout at the side here in this document, so as that you can easily be directed back to anything that was mentioned. One of the tools in particular that I'd like to highlight is the template sign-up sheet. And this is a really important part of all of our Right for Rights events. It's where that you can collect information from the people who participate in your local event and connect them directly to the work that Amnesty Canada is doing. And it's really easy. You can set up a simple sign-up desk at your event and invite people to sign in, sign petitions, learn more about Right for Rights and Amnesty's work, like Gord here in the picture on the right. Lovely desk set up. And once your event is over, we'd encourage you, as part of reporting back to us, so like in the feedback section on the Writeathon website, to also, as part of that reporting back, that process of evaluation and reflection, to post your sign-up sheets back to us at the address at the bottom. It's our Ottawa office in Ottawa. And you get a sign-up sheet for free in your Right for Rights kit that we send out to you, and it's also available to download and print. The link is in your handout, your resources handout, and it's also on the writeathon.ca website. And if you have any questions on this at all, I think Jenny, who's also on the call and introduced herself earlier, would be probably the best person to get in touch with. So, Letters to a Prisoner. This is something really cool. This is a wordless children's book, and it was inspired by the Right for Rights campaign. And it was created by an author, Jacques Goldstein, who's based in Montreal. Jenny and the youth activism team have been actively collaborating with Owl Kids Books to make this book available to the wider Amnesty Canada community. And it's a really fun and engaging way for young people from 6 and up to engage with and participate and promote human rights as well as the Right for Rights campaign. And there's a link for more information on the Letters to Prisoner in your resource handout. And Jenny, who is supporting and leading out on this work, again, is on the call. So do feel free to pop questions or anything on this in the chat or questions box, or also to ask some questions in the Q&A at the end of the training. I'm sure if you've never been to a Right for Rights event, or this is your first time to organise one, then you might be wondering, what does a Right for Rights event actually look like? So I've collected a few photos that I wanted to share with you from some various different events around the world in recent years to hopefully inspire you and maybe give you some ideas. So this image here is of an Amnesty group in Oakville who joined with A Taste of Colombia, another group, to Right for Rights. And they held this very intimate Right for Rights event. It was really beautiful and impactful. Here, these are Amnesty supporters in Calgary who came together and gathered at a Rosso Coffee Cafe to Right for Rights. So this was in a more public kind of facing space, but still really effective. This is a Right for Rights event in The Hague in the Netherlands, where there was a woman who was playing harp, as you can see in the center there, who was encouraging Right for Rights letter writers as they were gathering together in this kind of atrium, and just a really beautiful public event. This is a Right for Rights event in the Centre for Social Innovation in Toronto, where they hung really large-scale images of the Right for Rights cases, so is that you were really confronted with each of these cases as you came into the space. So it was really beautifully done. These are just examples, ways that people have used music as part of their Right for Rights event to engage people in a different way, to motivate and inspire people. On the top left, this is in Montreal, an event where musicians were brought in to help keep letter writers' energy up. On the top right is a DJ who came in at the letter writing marathon in Rio in Brazil. In the bottom left-hand corner, this is a local musician who was brought in to support and encourage Right for Right letter writers in Reykjavik in Iceland. And in the bottom right-hand corner, these are volunteers from Amnesty International Togo, and they're students from schools who are participating in a Right for Rights concert. It's really cool. These are some students from Kenner High School in Peterborough who joined for Right for Rights, and they used projection. They projected illustrations of the cases on the wall and helped people feel motivated. These are various different interpretations and creative approaches to the use of a postbox as a centerpiece for Right for Rights events. It's just really cool to see how people have built this kind of physical attribute into different events. These are just a few different photographs of how people have engaged and used outdoor space and public space during Right for Rights events through projection. At the top left-hand corner, this is actually a projection of an image of two prisoners of conscience who were projected onto the Bahrain embassy in France. The bottom left-hand corner is actually a street action, which was part of the Right for Right event that took people out of the event to participate and have this more public-facing attribute. And the two images on both the top right and left are actually from our letter writing marathon in Brazil, in Rio again. And this is one of Amnesty Japan's Right for Right events, where they created an artistic installation using the cases and engaging people at the event to be able to help create this beautiful display. And your Right for Rights event can be big or small, private, intimate, public, inside or outside. And you can get as creative as you want or keep it really, really, really simple. But the important thing to remember is why you're organising, which is for human rights. And if you can, try to have fun in the process too. So one other thing I wanted to highlight with you is about promoting your event. And you might consider this in terms of engaging local media to promote your event in the lead up to December 10th and let them know what you might have planned. And one of our local community group members from Stratford, Anne Carber, there's a quote here from her which I'll read out. She said, "We do really well with press coverage, probably because we're in a small city of 32,000 people with understaffed newspapers. We do up a press release in advance and send it to the 2 newspapers and the radio station. Both newspapers have then contacted us to write advance articles, and at least one usually does a follow-up piece as well. And the advance articles help to get people out without us having to buy advertisements or pay for event listings." And this image on the left-hand side is actually an example of local news that the Stratford group managed to get. So this is just one way that you might consider to promote your event. And Amnesty's media officer, Beth, has been putting together some ads that are going to go out in cities all across Canada. So in Toronto, ads will go out in both the Now magazine and Metro. An ad in Metro will also go out in Calgary, Winnipeg, Vancouver, and Ottawa. And there'll be ads in the Coast in Halifax and also in the Telegram in St. John's. And it's not too late for you to get in touch with local media or your local radio station about your event plans and sharing with them what's coming up, or even to submit and get in touch with them about a reflection piece of how it went and how many people came out. And you can use other channels as well. So if you're signed up to any newsletters in work or in your community or in your school, you can also use this as an opportunity to put a save the date or an event listing in there. And let's not forget that you can promote your event online, and we'll look at some of the ways you might be able to do that a little later. Just thrown an awful lot of information at you, and my own voice is ringing in my head. But we'll do a quick check-in and see if there's any questions after any of that. Ailish, did anything pop up?
Well, lots of people really appreciating all the wonderful pictures, Emma. And then a number of questions about where to order supplies. So you can get all of that at amnesty.ca/store. And there's also a link in your resources handout. And then there was just a question about raising funds for postage. And yeah, lots of people have a sort of donation box at their event for people to just drop in change to cover postage. Other groups have put up a thermometer on the wall to show how much they need to send the letters so that people feel excited about giving money. Then a question about scripts we can use to distribute as press releases, and there's a media kit on the Write-a-thon website, and we can send around the link to that.
Yeah,
And that's it for now.
I actually, you just reminded me in some of these creative ways for raising costs for postage. There's actually a really creative way that the Stratford group are actually doing that. They actually have incorporated a bake sale into their event. You can see some images and some quotes from the group in one of the blogs around how to get more people involved in coming out to your event. It's in the resources list. But it's actually a really creative way, and it's helped them to bring in public who aren't necessarily only already aware of Amnesty, but a bake sale kind of entice people in, not the usual suspects, for some nice cookies and stuff, but also helping to send off the letters. I just thought I'd share that as well. Cool. So what we'll do now is we're going to go over to Crystal. And Crystal, would you be ready and able to share some wonderful stories from your Right for Rights organizing with us?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll tell everyone what we've been doing in Regina the past few years that's worked well. And then I'll also tell you of some other event ideas that I'm aware of. So what we have done recently is we've partnered with a local pub cafe. It's really popular, it's really nice, it's a big open space, and they have been kind enough to let us do the Oh, I think I was muted briefly. Sorry about that. So at this pub, we've been able to do the event Saturday or Sunday afternoon, drop in, come and go, 2 to 4:30 p.m. kind of thing. And of course, the pub is still open to the public, but it's really great because there people can buy their own snacks and drinks or coffee or whatever they want, which means we don't have to spend money supplying it. And we also don't have to make urns of coffee and do all of that. So it's very easy in terms of setup. But moreover, it's a really cool, fun place that people want to go. So I think that adds to the appeal. And it's also good because sometimes people come in and they're just there for the pub. They're not there for our event. But we ask them, are you here for Write for Rights? And they're, no, what's that? So then we tell them, hey, here's the stuff. You can write a letter if you want. So that works okay. We have done a variety of things as well in terms of some of the entertainment piece. We've had guest speakers, and that works well, but I think I prefer it with mostly letter writing and then just little snippets of people getting up and talking because it's a come and go. So if you have a speaker, then everyone's got to be there for that. But the other thing is when there's a speaker or there's a presentation going on, people will stop writing and they'll pay attention. So I think it works really well when people get up periodically from the Amnesty group throughout the event and just say, this is what Amnesty is about, this is why this event is really important, and do that briefly a few times so that people catch it whenever they're there. But in between, we let people get to their letter writing. And we've had music, live music, people play in between, which then letter writing can go on at the same time. And something that I think has been really positive is a PowerPoint of good news stories that shows all of the times that letter writing and specifically Write for Rights cases have had successes, because there's a lot. And Amnesty has a lot of those good success stories. So by having those cycling through on a slideshow, I think it's really inspiring people that this works and it's making a difference. And that's what we've done when we've gotten up on the mic and talked about it as well, is shared some of those good news stories. Promotion is a big thing that we've done well, I think, here. And some of the things, some of you on this webinar may have seen them. We've taken pictures a few times in advance of Write for Rights and shared them on our social media. So we'll go out and we'll take lots of pictures of people holding signs with the names of the cases. And then we promote them on social media, you know, sharing one every day. This is coming up, Write for Rights, we'll be writing for, and the person's name, and share it. And then the next day, another picture, we're writing for, and we keep doing that to promote it. It's an easy one to promote too, because it's the world's biggest human rights event. We can talk about 4.6 million letters written, and I think it gets people really excited because it's so tangible and we can really talk about the difference it's making. So it's a good time to get into classrooms, to talk to community groups. There's a lot of opportunity in advance of Write for Rights to talk to people about it. And when I'm doing that, I take letter writing things along. So a few times we've been invited to a community organization or somewhere to talk about it. And I know that they might not be able to come out to our event on Sunday, but I'll take greeting cards or I'll take letter writing materials, sometimes something pre-written that people can just sign depending on the audience, but then they can do a little bit of it right there. So that way we're getting more letters written and we're getting more actions. Other things too that I wanted to tell you is, I've told you the event that we have that's the pub and a come and go. People also do events in a variety of smaller scale ways that turn out really good. So some of the students do things at their school where they'll have a table set up in the hallway with the letter writing cases and paper and all that, and they'll just leave it there all week. And then when students have a break, they're passing by, then they can write a letter. That works well. We have a member who's an artist, and she had an art show at a local gallery, and for the duration she had the stuff set up there too. So it can be kind of passive. If you have the letter writing materials and a little display set up, you can leave it in your lunchroom at work, or you can leave it at your school, and you don't always have to be sitting there with it, and people can kind of work on it throughout the week. So that can be a good opportunity if you speak about it to your coworkers or your classmates, and then you can leave it there for them to work on as well. We also, something else that we do is solidarity actions, of course, and Emma Dane showed you some of those examples of things in other places around the world in the slideshow. Is as well as writing the letters, we also do the letters to some of the human rights defenders. So you know, on the cases, some of them will give an address or somewhere to send a card or a message of solidarity. We always encourage people to do those. And we'll have creative things available, blank greeting cards or just colored paper. And that's fun too, because if you get kids coming, they can color something. So having that available and encouraging people, I think, is kind of it's a good way to get people involved, especially if they haven't been involved with Amnesty before, because people like to reach out directly to the human rights defenders, the organizations, and show that support. So that's one of the times of the year that we do that and we focus on it. So that's important. Something that we also do is, like I said, with the photos we were doing beforehand on social media to promote the event, we'll also take solid photos with solidarity actions. So we might have a photo, we're standing with Clovis, and we'll take the photo and we'll have those signs made, kind of like the one I'm holding in the picture, but you know, make them for all the different cases. And then we'll have them available at Write for Rights. So then, as well as letter writing, we'll encourage people, take your picture with a sign, and then we ask them, we get them to sign a media release thing. Are you okay if we put this on our Facebook and our social media for Amnesty Saskatchewan? And then we share it. And part of it is we want those human rights defenders to see those pictures. So we'll make sure that Amnesty Canada sees the pictures and gets them. And then that goes out as a message of solidarity. And when we're doing it in advance of December 10th, then it also helps to get a lot of momentum around the event and get people interested and excited. What else? Oh, we've also done some kind of things around the practical bits, I guess. Is you saw in one of the pictures in the slideshow the mailbox things. So the one of all the white boxes lined up, that was something that we did here. And we did it because if you mail every letter individually, $2.50 for an international stamp. So what we started doing is putting all the ones for a particular place in one box, and then we were packaging them up in manila envelopes so that we could send a bunch of letters all at once. So instead of the individual postage, it was a bit cheaper, but also then we kind of had this, you know, all the boxes, and it was sort of the count too, that you could see that they're filling up for each place. So that's also a good way to do it. And people sort of had that visual of, okay, I've done 8 out of the 10, you know, I have 2 more left, or however many. So that's always good. And something else you can do too, I think, is we're writing for all the cases, and all of them are important, and at our event we'll have them all there. But in advance of Write for Rights, you can try and engage community groups and individuals on a particular case. So if we're working with our Indigenous Student Center, we might try to get them to do something around Site C, or that might be what they're interested in. So maybe they want to do a solidarity photo action, maybe they want to do letter writing for that, or if we speak to a particular community, sometimes there's cases that involve youth, so that's always good with high schools. So sometimes that's the way to let people know about a particular case and draw their attention to the event in general as well. So yeah, so those are some of the things, but I think you can always do something for it. And like Emma Jane said, it's just so much fun to do this event because it's the world's biggest human rights event. It's so easy to engage people and get people to care. There's so many good news stories, and everyone knows that just by coming and writing one letter, they're part of it. They're making such a big difference. So it's a really good sell. And if someone hasn't been involved in Amnesty before, this is the one. this is the day you want to come to, because it is so exciting and it makes such a big difference. So it's good to get people out there, but don't feel like you have to plan a big event and, you know, rent a space and make it a big thing. You can easily contact a local coffee shop and say, is it okay if we push a few tables together in the corner, set up all our stuff, and do this between these hours? And it's quite easy to get some places to sign on to that, because it's not costing them anything. It's bringing business in, and they're helping out with a really important cause, and you get the space and you get all the foot traffic that comes through. So you can do it in a pretty small way, but you can make it big if you take some of those tips that were shared before in terms of some of the social media and reaching out and trying to get it in your local newspaper and all of that beforehand. So that's kind of my quick, some of the ideas and some of the things we've done. But as we go along here, if we have more, if people have any questions, I would be happy to talk more about some of the things that we've done here in Saskatchewan.
Wow, thanks a million, Crystal. You've got my creative juices flowing already out of all of that. We'll do a quick check-in now. I know we've got the separate space at the end for questions and answers as well, but Ailish, I think there was a good few questions coming in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Crystal, people excited about your sharing your stories and all those wonderful ideas. Just a few notes. Some people saying that when they write letters, they need a more quiet space. So that is a good idea if you're having a noisy public event, to have a room that's a bit more quiet for people who just want to sit with their letters. Other people talking about the idea of having Write for Rights in places that we might not always think of. So churches and other religious spaces that are very open to allowing a quick Write for Rights event at their services. The idea of having Write for Rights events at your work, which is a wonderful idea. So yeah, lots of people very excited and energized with ideas.
Cool, great. So we'll crack on. Let's look a little bit more at how we might use our Write for Rights event to show solidarity. So last year, more than 4 million actions were taken in more than 180 countries across the world. People came together for a moment of global action and solidarity, and in so doing, they joined and became part of a movement to achieve justice for those suffering appalling human rights abuses. You may have heard about Maxima Acuna last year. Maxima stood up for her right to peacefully live off her own property, a small plot of land sought for by a mining company who wanted to develop the Congo gold and copper mine. And one day, the mining company came to Maxima's door, demanding that she leave her land. And when Maxima refused, she was met with violent brutality. Last year, Amnesty sought to stand in solidarity with Maxima and call on the Peruvian authorities to provide protection for her and her family, and also to recognise her invaluable work and contributions as a human rights defender. In May this year, 2017, all criminal charges against Maxima were dropped. As we mentioned earlier, it's not only those actions to decision makers and global leaders that made an impact and resulted in this success. Write for Rights is also about building solidarity. Imagine being in Maxima's position, feeling alone, not knowing if anyone cares what happens to you or your land. And now imagine receiving a letter from someone you don't know from across the world, telling you that they believe in you and that they believe in the peaceful cause that you are standing for. That's what real letters can do. They bring hope to people in even the most dire of situations. And when they arrive in huge numbers, they're also an unmistakable reminder to authorities and others that the world is watching. Those letters not only bring great solace, but they also help make people feel safer. We're going to look at a short video. I know that the sound wasn't so great on the last one, but this one is actually, it's in Spanish with English subtitles. And it's just a really beautiful short piece, but about capturing the moment when Maxima received all of the solidarity messages and letters that were sent to her last year. And and I think it's just a really moving piece. So I hope that the sound plays, but it's not fully relevant for this. You can just follow via subtitles. Okay.
Creo que tu trabajo es muy importante. Espero que tu situación cambie rápido. Les deseo fuerza y valor. Tu vida y tu trabajo son muy importantes. Les agradezco infinito que yo no me encuentro sola, estoy respaldada por mucha gente de todo el mundo y de muchos países. Gracias por todo. Sigan así, ayudando, apoyando, no solo a mí, ¿no? Porque en diferentes lugares del Perú hay también muchas mujeres que son esto que pasan, estos tipos de maltratos, de abusos, de todo, igual que vean por todo. Me pongo yo en mi lugar como mujer campesina, humilde, me pongo en mi lugar que sí también hay otras personas también en otros lugares.
So I hope that the sound managed to increase a little bit better there for everyone. I think the sound's just coming through my computer here, so hopefully that was a bit better. The woman that you see here, Fofoong, Amnesty supporters across the world sent more than 394,000 emails, letters, tweets, and more for Fofoong during Right for Rights. And in addition to sending urgent messages to decision makers, people also took time to send solidarity messages. While still in prison, Fofoong told Amnesty that receiving letters gives me real inspiration for what we are doing, and I have begun to notice that the world is watching and cheering us. We are not alone. And building practices of showing solidarity into our Right for Rights events helps us to connect human rights advocates and activists directly to the rights holders. It connects us to a global movement of people working towards freedom, equity, and justice. There are many ways that you can show solidarity at your Right for Rights event. But building solidarity is about more than just saying that you notice or agree that an issue is affecting people in another country is bad. Feminist writer Bell Hooks tells us that solidarity is not the same as support. To experience solidarity, we must have a community of interests, shared beliefs, and goals around which to unite, to build sisterhood. Support can be occasional. It can be easily withdrawn. Solidarity requires sustained, ongoing commitment. It's important to keep this in mind as you plan the different ways that you can go about showing solidarity at your Right for Rights event. You could use your event to practice meaning solidarity with Indigenous folks right here in Canada. For example, you could use the opportunity to connect with an Indigenous rights group in your community, inviting them to offer a land acknowledgement, and maybe to highlight the Site C case. A land acknowledgement is the process of deliberately naming that this is Indigenous land and that Indigenous people have rights to this land. And you can check out a really great blog on how to give land and territory acknowledgement that's linked to in your handout resource. And I really recommend taking a bit of time to read through that. Another way that you can show solidarity is to invite local community groups or activist circles, such as not only Indigenous rights groups, but possibly feminist groups or LGBTIQ organizations or activists to be able to come and join your event and possibly to even speak or to to share in creating solidarity messages around maybe some of the women human rights defender cases or the transgender rights case for Finland. And so you could focus and try to highlight different right for rights cases, and also be able to use the opportunity to connect and build more meaningful and long-term relationships with other social or environmental justice groups that are already existing in your community. Another thing you could do is encourage people to not only send their action letters, but also, like Crystal and others said, was to consider writing solidarity messages for the human rights defenders that they're taking action for, like the ones you saw being delivered to Maxima. You could create a small area at your event for a solidarity photo booth, and you could get really creative there. Maybe bring a chalkboard or a whiteboard for writing messages, that people could take photographs for social media, or maybe collate a photo to be a photo folder to be able to share with event participants afterwards. If you have space or materials, you could maybe create a solidarity banner as a creative way to engage young people, or for people to be able to add messages to, or build or paint in a certain section of a wider message on a sheet throughout the day. You could use maybe some of these solidarity messages or a banner that you create during the day or throughout the course of your event to be able to hold a group solidarity action picture, which you could share online. And again, if you have space, you could maybe print out some solidarity-related readings or articles and create a reading corner in your event. There's a blog on how to build meaningful solidarity in your resource handout, and there's a lot of different resources which could be interesting to read for people to be able to further inform themselves at the bottom of that blog. Another example that I want to share with you that some Right for Rights organisers, when some of the ways that they've shown solidarity has been to create space to hear affected voices. So for example, some groups have invited prisoners of conscience who've been released to come and speak at their Right for Rights event. And this isn't always possible, but definitely not with short notice, but it's something to keep in mind for future organising. I'm going to pause here for a moment to check in again and see if there's any further questions or comments on showing solidarity for your Rights for Rights event.
So maybe not particularly about solidarity, but a couple of questions that we've gotten. One, is the success slideshow available online? And it is, and I shared the link to that. A few people saying that they're organizing on their own, and what are some ideas for that? So lots of things that we've already talked about, like press releases and using social media, and also really important to make sure you register your event at writeathon.ca so other people looking to join an event can find you. And there's also a blog that I sent along about how to promote your event and try to grow it. And then another question about whether emails are as powerful as actual letters. And while we do have e-actions for all the cases and would encourage you to sign them and share them, and even at your event to maybe have places set up where people can sign those. For Right for Rights, we really want people to be sending letters because of the impact that those handwritten letters coming in from across the world has, particularly when we're sending solidarity messages to human rights defenders.
Great, thanks a million, Eilish. So let's talk a little bit more about Right for Rights and engaging online spaces as part of our event planning. So because we live in a digital world, the way that we express ourselves and communicate with the world around us is constantly changing. Information can travel the globe in an instant, and this has opened up a world of opportunity for those of us with human rights activist spirits to make even more of a difference. Our reach has never been wider. For example, we can show support for human rights defenders on the other side of the world using only our mobile phones, or put pressure on leaders and government officials to live up to their promises and uphold human rights with the click of a button. So, how can we use these digital tools to harness the power of online spaces and platforms? So we can raise awareness by sharing information about our Right for Rights cases on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, on our blogs, etc., or other social media platforms that we might have available to us. We can empower others to participate and engage with human rights by promoting the Right for Rights events that we're organising and sharing online actions for Right for Rights cases for those who can't make events in person. We can create ways for people to show solidarity online by incorporating solidarity actions into our events and by making maybe, for example, a photo booth or adding solidarity messages to a wall to take photos next to. And we can harness that power of online spaces to be able to connect to the global human rights movement. And we can do this in many ways by sharing and reposting other Right for Rights actions and solidarity work happening in and around December 10th and encouraging participants as well as our friends and families and colleagues to join in the conversation online. But connecting to this movement and remembering that relationship of when we act local, that we connect to the global. We're thinking globally of what kind of an impact that we're going to have. And using digital tools to do this is brilliant and really essential part of our planning and process for Right for Rights. By sharing our stories in our own networks about human rights violations, and the different ways to help, we can encourage our friends and families to take action against oppression. You could do this by posting about the Right for Rights campaign on your Twitter or Facebook account and suggesting that those who take time to read your post also take time to take action. So we've put in a sample tweet that you might pop up on your account to encourage people to keep updated in the lead up to December 10th. But while you're posting on your page using maybe illustrations, social media shareables, or the cases or online actions, encouraging people to participate via your many channels, it's important to keep in mind that it's really beneficial to speak directly to the person who will be reading the post, trying to convince them to take action or to take the issue or the story personally. This builds empathy. To remember to use clear and jargon-free language and to not assume that the person reading your post has previous knowledge on the issue that you're talking about. It's important to remember to motivate and empower anybody reading about Right for Rights to be part of the solution and demonstrating how their action will contribute to change. And one way you can do that is by sharing success or impact stories of Right for Rights cases, such as that of Maxima and many others, which are available. There's a lot of resources and links to different videos and success stories from the Right for Rights campaign in your resource list handout. And this is a really great way to connect the impact that people can have when they engage with Right for Rights with possibly sharing a link to an online action for this year's case. We've never had more power to help human rights defenders than we do now. And simply showing our support online can make a huge difference to people's lives, or even just showing them that they're not alone. So there's an awful lot of digital tools and resources and different things that you can do before, during, and after your event. Some of the things are listed here. So we would encourage you to sign up to join the Facebook event for Amnesty Canada's Facebook account for Right for Rights event, and also to add us as a co-host to your Facebook event. And that when you add us as a co-host to your Facebook event, it allows that event to also be visible on the event listing for the Amnesty Canada, the national Facebook account. And this means that more people are going to come across it and we can connect more people and boost different posts for your event. We can target that based on where different locations. So it's a really great way to increase the visibility and promotion of your event. You can retweet and repost and share various different Right for Rights posts on all different social media channels, whether that's videos, actions, success stories, event information, and also not to forget that you can also look up Amnesty International groups and also follow and share and repost their work as well that they're doing. And this is again connecting people from that local to global piece, which I think is really important that we do throughout our Right for Rights work. You can use the social media shareables, which are, we saw earlier, the illustrations of the cases, and there's many different ones and different variations of that, which are also linked to a folder that you can download all of the different illustrations. And that's also a link in your resources list, and it's also on the writeathon.ca website. We've also got here a second handout, which is actually a photography resource. And this is something that the International Secretariat and Amnesty have developed only recently. And it's a really great resource because this is something that you can read through yourself if you're somebody who's got a camera and you want to document your own event, or if you have a specific person in your organizing team or who will be participating at your event who will be taking photographs. And it just shows you some really great examples and tips for making those photos look extra shareable. You know, people will want to look at them and that they'll stand out. And it would be really great if you don't forget to either tag us in your Facebook folder, the album for your Right for Rights event, or to send it in to us, to Jenny. Her contact details will be in your email that you'll get tomorrow with the feedback form. But just to remember to share it with us. And even if it's only your favorite pictures, like maybe you've got 3 or 5, if you've been creative, let us know, because we can show those photographs to other people and we can use, like we saw earlier with some of the things, it's a really great way to share and inform one another. During your event, other things that you can do. So maybe create a digital hub, and this may or may not be possible depending on your location or your venue. But if you do have a computer for people to take action or show solidarity online, that's a really good tool to have. So people can come in and just, if they don't have time to sit down and write a full letter, what they can do is you can have the online actions, which are available for some of the Right for Rights cases this year, and people can just come in and edit an online letter and be able to still take action and engage with Right for Rights, which is really cool. You could project or have on rotation, playing on a screen somewhere, some of the Right for Rights videos. And there's loads of different videos that you'll see in your resources list, like what is Right for Rights, how does Right for Rights work, information about different cases, success stories from previous Right for Rights cases, or a STACLA page, which maybe some people know what STACLA is or some don't, but this is a platform that allows us to show various different social media content in one place. And we will be creating a link that we'll send to everybody who's participated in this and all organisers for Right for Rights, a link to a STACLA page which you can project to or have visible at your Right for Rights event, which will show not only content coming from Canada but also across the world. And again, this just helps to see if you're sitting down to write a letter for Shakilia Jackson and you're looking up at a screen and able to see, my gosh, there's people in 20 other countries across the world or 200 other countries across the world also taking action for Shakilia Jackson at the same time. It's quite motivating, quite inspirational, and it's a way for us to feel connected to one another, you know, that otherwise we don't always have the opportunity to. And just the last point that I put in there was maybe you could also play some sounds of resistance. So there's actually a blog that was written, I think, by Amnesty UK, and it's also in your resources list, but it's like the top 50 protest songs. So yeah, you could, even if you don't have a local musician, you know, you could have some songs playing on a playlist or something like this. So there's a lot of different things in your resources list that I really recommend having a look at. And there's depending on the event that you're hosting or where you're trying to organize it, like if you're a teacher or an educator, there's also a lot of human rights education materials, and it's all linked to in your resources list. So there's short micro-learning module. There's also a number of different lesson plans that have been put out for probably secondary school or like the high school age bracket in there as well. And yeah, I really recommend using some of these resources and taking time to go through them and see what could be applicable. And there's a lot of breakdowns in there. I think at this point I'm going to do another check-in. I'm sure people probably have a lot more things, or Crystal, Ailish, Jenny, Elena, do chip in if there's other things, particularly around the digital or engaging online spaces, that you feel you'd like to say.
Well, a few people have just said that they are creating Facebook events, which is wonderful to hear. So please do add us as a co-host so we can help you with promotion. As Emma said, we're Amnesty International Canada. And then, yeah, people loving the idea of the Stackla, which is great. It's really a good thing to project so you can see that coming across. And someone also says that they put up, which you could also do by projector, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights for people to reference. And I just flagged in response to that too, that we do have printed copies of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in case you're writing about Site C this year.
I think I just saw another question come in there about other social media apps beyond Facebook and Twitter. And I would definitely say, yeah, Ailish, you just hit it on the head there, Instagram. And I think a lot of young people in particular are really using Instagram even more than Facebook and Twitter. And that's maybe something to really consider. And I hope that photography handout will be something that'll be really helpful, because Instagram is all about how we take photographs, and it's about how we frame things and make things look a certain way. So yeah, I would definitely check that out. I don't know, did anybody else have any others that they wanted to mention?
Yeah, actually, something that we are talking about with Caitlin, who does a lot of our digital and our communications, is using apps like Snapchat. Those can be really cool for creating stories, and stories is also a feature of Instagram as well. And something else that's really neat about Snapchat is that you can actually, for I think it's like $5 or something like that, Ailish, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you can actually purchase like a little location feature or like a filter that you can use on there. So that's a super fun and engaging way to promote your event and Right for Rights as well.
Yeah, so if you're doing just, for example, a specific building, then it's generally $5 to have a Snapchat filter, and we will probably have one designed. So if you're interested in that, we could send it to you, and you just go through the Snapchat app and you set it up for the hours that you want it that day, and then everyone can apply that filter to their pictures.
Yeah, there's some really great digital tools. And again, if you register your event, but also anyone who's registered for this training, we are going to keep in touch with you and be sharing with you all matter of materials and resources between now and December 10th and even beyond. So yeah, keep an eye on your inbox. Maybe add us as add Amnesty as a contact in your inbox, so as that any of the emails don't get put in your trash. So that's just something so you don't miss out on any materials or resources that are sent your way. Great. I think we're going to head straight over to you, Elena. Are you able to share with us some stories from the Right for Rights organizing that you've both supported and helped create?
Of course. Just want to say first that I was inspired by everything I've heard from Crystal, and I've seen in the comments that other people were too, that lots that she covered and lots of amazing ideas. So I will try to add a little bit to that. And I'm going to talk about a small event, because most events that happen across Canada, at least from what I know, are smaller events that are put together by our community groups or by our action circles or Amnesty members or other people who are maybe not as connected with us. They might not have large communities, so the event, at least at the start, it's what we call small events, but all very powerful in different ways, and each event is different. And I always say, if you can write one letter, your letter might be the one that's the tipping point. It's making a difference in somebody's life. So coming together with at least one other person would mean more than one letter. So I'm going to talk first about one of our Amnesty International local groups in Toronto, and that's because it's my own community group, and I've been involved with the group for 20 years. And earlier on, Emma mentioned the fact that we have 15 years of Right for Rights, and I think my group has about 10-year plus of Right for Rights. And every time we've done it either in a little pub or cafe, and for the past 6-7 years we've done it in somebody's home, and it's the same person who is hosting. Actually, it's two members of our group, husband and wife, who are hosting it every year. So it's a potluck, and the food is amazing. Some of the members are really great at baking. Some are at cooking, very sophisticated dishes or sophisticated presentations. So that always attracts. But what I found the most inspiring is the fact that at the first gathering for Right for Rights in our members' home, we found out that the way they got involved is because of the parents of one of them who live in a small community. They were Amnesty members for most of their life. They are now in their 85 plus. And when we organized our first event there, they came from up north to join our group for the Right for Rights. And so we had the grandparents, we had the parents who are the people who are the members in our group. They have their own kids, and the kids joined us. So they were 3 generations of letter writers in the house. And for the past 3 years or 4, we have the 4th generation, the great grandkids. So each generation introduces the other to Amnesty and to Right for Rights, and that's just amazing. Like, we all found it very inspiring to hear the stories on how the grandparents started with Amnesty and how they passed on the inspiration and the information and the knowledge to their kids, who then passed it to their kids, and now hopefully is getting to the grandkids. So finding those very special, unique connections or inspiring stories when we can, and it's not always possible, but I do know that our group, the local group, is one of the largest across the country. It's now 20 people, and that's a lot for a community group, and many of them were first introduced to our group activities via the Right for Rights event in these people's homes. So always look for personal stories that can inspire, for those connections. Think about sharing food, and Crystal said the same thing. It's good. It's bringing people together, and yeah, that's what I will say about a small group event. I'm also involved in support of larger events that our members do, or that young people do in universities or high schools, or teachers might do. And one thing that I found, I don't know, it makes people feel that they are part of the larger event. Is, I know in different years we've tried when we could to bring together information about Right for Rights happening in other parts of the country and other parts of the world. Of course, technology is a key part in making sure that that can happen. Then time is also a matter, but whenever we were able to bring that information, it inspired people. Another thing that I found wonderful was the fact that for the one of the larger events, we created this Canada Post mailbox. So it looks like exactly a Canada Post mailbox. And we encouraged participants to go to that mailbox and post their letter. So it's that moment of, wow, yet another letter that's going in the mail in support of somebody. And we combine that with going to the mic from time to time and letting people know how many letters have been written so far at that event. If we have any information about other events happening in other parts of the country or the world, we also try to bring that information. So making sure always that people know we are connected and we are working together, and it is a global campaign. So looking from the local to the global. For large events, I find that Right for Rights it's an amazing entry point for new members or new people who want to get involved. And we generally in Toronto, for the Toronto event, we put out a call for volunteers every year, and we try to find roles for everybody so that everybody has a part. It's part of making it all happen. And with new people, they generally are greeters, or they take people to different stations that happen there, or if they are into social media, we make sure that that's what they do. But just try to find roles at larger events for everybody, and keep in mind for people who are very new to the organization or who might be interested but don't know where to start. Right for Rights, of course, if we are around November, December, it's a great entry point. I know one thing that especially young people seem to like at the larger events is the fact that we created a social media hub inside the Right for Rights. So it's an area where we have a group of people who use different social media channels. So we can give them the passwords to the more, I don't know, official ones, but they can also use their personal ones if they want. And their main task is to ensure that for the duration of the event, they post photographs and they tweet and they let the world know about what's going on there. So that was for the past 2 or 3 years very, very successful. I also find that having good visuals, again, for larger events or for public events, it's very important. And I know all our high schools or universities would connect with us to find out if we have any visuals, what those are, and how they can make use of them. And one reason for that is their intention to take photographs during the event and to post those photographs during the event and after, and having the great visuals and props would help with that. I think we mentioned, other people mentioned the idea of photo booths, which we've used many times, and it was just something successful. Another thing to mention is, again, where possible, to have areas for kids and actions for them, and arts and crafts and coloring things and crayons to ensure that kids and families are an integral part of the event, that it's space for everybody, and every contribution is important, and it helps. What else? Well, I think I'm gonna stop here because I want to make sure we also have some time for questions.
Thanks a million, Elena. I think some people were finding it a bit challenging to hear you speak, so I think your audio might have just been a bit off for a couple of people. It was fine for me, but that might have been an issue for a few people. I think we're just going to go straight into Q&A. Ailish, was there other stuff that came up there that you'd like to pop first?
Sure. Well, lots of people just sharing great ideas, having a potluck, engaging with a little free library that someone has in their neighborhood, somewhere where they ring a bell at an event every time a letter is ready to be mailed. And then someone just had a question about how many people participate in Canada. And last year we estimated that about 30,000 participated, whether on their own or at an event. But if people want to keep typing questions now, we can answer them.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to forget that we have still Crystal and Elena on the here available for questions, and also Ailish and Jenny as well as the Right for Rights kind of point for contact and coordinator too. So do throw out any kind of questions, practical, creative ideas, anything at all. And yeah, we've got another few minutes before we need to wrap up.
Elena here, can I add something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to say that I know sometimes think that these events have to be big events with lots of people, but actually my experience is all events are different and all are important, and every single letter that we can write adds to the national, or the local, the national, and the global numbers. And again, I'm giving the example of the group that I talked about earlier on. And initially we were 5 people. And we were writing every single letter and every single greeting card that we had for Right for Rights. And of course, slowly, our numbers grew. We were lucky that way, I would say. But we were a small group of 5 people, and we wrote a large number of letters. So don't think it has to be a big event with very many people. Just 2 people, 3 people. It's amazing.
Thanks, Elena. I think that that's also a really good point to raise. I think there's some more questions coming through.
Yeah, so someone asking about copyright issues when making up props for the photo booth. And it would depend on what you're using, but if you're using any of the photos that we have, like the illustrations for the cases, then you're free to use those. I don't know if anyone else has input on that.
No, I think anything that we have, you can use pretty much freely. I think the Rebecca Hendon illustrations, so the ones that you'll see, like the ones we showed earlier, like the case profiles, those ones, we can't alter them. So like we can add text over them if you take an illustration and you want to use that to add your details for your event on social media or something, that's no problem. But we can't cut out little sections of them and things like that, because yeah, I think that's the only piece with those. But other than that, I think feel free and add them together. And I think that there's posters as well. So I've put a few other links in the resources list. I just see this other question here about other signage available, and I'm not sure if you've got other things that Michael, that you'd like to say to that. I hope I'm interpreting that correctly, but there is posters and things like that available, which are all linked to in your resources guide, or that are on the writeathon.ca website as well. So there's some different things there as well, which you could use and print out and pop them up around the community to raise awareness about your event. So there's some templates there which I think are really worth having a look for. Yeah, there's a very basic one there, but I think you could create something even more beautiful using some of the illustrations, if I'm honest. But it's a good template to start from, a good starting point.
Yeah, and I would also encourage you to take a look at amnesty.ca/store to see the things that you could order in terms of having a photo booth, because we've got t-shirts, capes, buttons, stickers, all kinds of things that you could use to take pictures at your event.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, I know it's 8:30 now. I just want to see if there's any last questions, just if people want to take a last second or two to just type in a last question or two, or from any of our organisers, Jenny, Ailish, Elena, Crystal, if there's any final points or thoughts that you'd like to say before we wrap up.
This is Crystal again, and I'll just say you'll have my contact information when the recording from the webinar is sent around. You can also track me down through Amnesty as well. But feel free to get in touch if you have any questions about any of the ideas I told you of things we've done here. I am happy to share ideas and discuss things with you. And I hope you all do something, even if it's just sitting down and writing letters with your family or your friend or something like that.
Thanks so much, Crystal. Okay, if nobody else has anything else, there's just some really nice reflections here being shared. So thank you very much. I hope that this was a good space for everybody. I want to thank everybody for taking time out to join us. This is really great. And again, I just want to remind you that we're going to send an email tomorrow, and there will be a form in there. And I encourage you to take time to fill that in. There's only a couple of short questions in there, but there's one in particular, which is if there's any ideas or suggestions that you have in relation to resources, materials, tools, more training, like anything at all that you have that you think that we could be providing you with between now and December 10th, or even looking beyond December 10th that you have ideas for, please do write that down and share it with us. We will be sending the webinar recording and also the handouts that you had as well in the email tomorrow. So yeah, we'll stay in touch, folks, and hopefully we'll check in with you again after Write for Rights to hear maybe a little bit more and some feedback from you about how your events went, which I think would be really great. I'm definitely really encouraged by all of the questions that you asked tonight, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about the events that you organise. Thanks very much, and that's it. We're going to sign off now. Thanks, everybody, and thanks a million to our speakers who joined us from all different places to make this training happen. Thank you.